of the Church of Christ or Iglesia ni Cristo.
Whole life.
INCRadio Chatline.
Conversations that matter.
This is what I ask. Let me always dwell in the temple of the Lord till I bring my last.
Hello, everyone who's tuning into INC Radio Chat Line. It's another Friday for us here in the States. I know for those who might be tuning in the Philippines, it's already Saturday. But good morning to everyone. Good afternoon if it's already afternoon for you. Thanks for tuning in with us. I'm your host for today, Tony Rose Valenzuela. I'm broadcasting here from, no, I'm not in Sterling Heights. Almost said Sterling Heights, just out of habit. No, I'm in, where am I today? No, Farmington Hills. I'm in Farmington Hills broadcasting. I'm outside. This background is not fake. I promise. It's real. I would touch it if I could. But I'm not by myself today. I have my friend there over in Rockford, Illinois. Let's say hi to him.
Yes, hello everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whichever part of the world you're tuning in. I'm Jamal Cruz, live here from Rockford, Illinois. Or am I? Yes, I am. Yes, I am in Rockford, Illinois today.
Trying to fake us out, EJ. Am I? Am I really here? No, yeah. So thanks for
This
being
is a
here.
very real background.
Yeah, it's a very real background. Yeah. Yeah, this is real. You can see it, right? I'm touching it there. So thank you to everyone who may be tuning in with us live, or maybe you may even be watching the replay. We hope that you can join us for our topic today for those who are watching live and comment there in the comment section, in the live chat section, because we'll be talking about trade-offs. Now, this isn't necessarily a business topic. Okay, you might hear that you might hear that phrase or that word, and you're like, "We're talking about business today?" No, not quite. But we will be talking about, I guess, well, I don't want to spoil the definition. First, let me ask EJ actually, what is your understanding, or you could give an example of what you think a trade-off is?
Hmm. I mean, if I have to explain what a trade-off is, I think it's like, like giving up something to gain something.
Okay, so what's an example? What's the first example that you can think of off the top of your head?
Like, let's say you woke up 10 minutes before your alarm. Like, you have a choice there. Do I get up or do I try to get that 10 minutes in? But if you know that there's a possibility that if you try to get that 10 minutes in, that you might oversleep and wake up at like 11 instead.
Got it.
So
Okay.
do you get up 10 minutes before you're supposed to, or do you risk do you risk waking up like really late? So I guess
So
it's a
the
trade.
what I'm hearing there is kind of what happened to me a few times recently, right? So when you wake up, when you choose to snooze, right? When you choose to snooze, the what you're trading off is that time that you could have had if you woke up early, right? So you're basically giving up that time that you could have had to prepare. Maybe you're giving up that time you could have had to get yourself a coffee, like going to stop by somewhere to get yourself some food, right? So the trade off there is that you could sleep in a little bit more, but now you don't have the time that you could have had to do other things before you start your day, right? Whether it's going to work, whether it's going to school. Another thing that I can think of is maybe for schoolwork or for work when we procrastinate versus doing stuff early or on time, right? Your trade off there a lot of the time is the time, right? The time that you need to do stuff. But that was a good definition that you gave earlier. Basically, you're giving up one thing in return for another. Any other examples that you can think of that came to mind for you?
I was just gonna comment. I think like in school, like what I did, because usually I have to wait for because I rode the bus going home, and there's like a set schedule for the bus. So what I did was, while I'm waiting for the bus, I will do like my homework early because I didn't
Mm,
like it's not because I'm studious. It's because I didn't want to do homework at home.
got
Like,
it.
I know
Okay.
that if I'm at home, like I would be tempted to just lounge around. So like what I did was like that 1 hour before like the bus arrives, I would do my homework. Like I would finish as much of my homework as I can. So when I get home, it's just only a little bit of homework left. So it didn't feel like I had homework to do.
Got it. Okay. So it wasn't, so you can't technically call it homework because at that point it's just work because it never made it home.
Yeah. Sometimes it does, but yeah, most of the time I finish it at school in the library while I'm waiting for the bus to arrive.
Got it. Okay. So yeah, those are some good examples, right? We think about time. Another example I can think of is maybe, since we're on the topic of maybe accomplishing different things, working independently versus working, on a team. When you work independently, what you're trading off is maybe creativity, being able to have that additional as they say, when you have more than one brain, you get a little bit more in terms of the creativity aspect, or just the help, just the manpower in general. Working independently, you kind of have to do everything by yourself, versus on a team. Working on a team is also great. It's great to have the additional minds and being able to have more people to kind of spread the workload. But at the same time, when you work on a team, you have to compromise, right? You can't have everyththing done
You don't
your
get
way as opposed to
100% of the choice, right?
yeah, yeah. There's things that you kind of have to give up in each situation, right? So there's some examples. I don't know if there are those in team live chat, things that you can think of, trade-offs that come to mind as we're explaining the definition here. I do see Nathaniel Russell there in team live chat, as well as Doxa Yango, who's greeting 110th anniversary of the Church of Christ there, and to A Christian Rhoda, who's watching from the Philippines as well. And we also have Melvi Tamayo. They're tuning in from, I know she's from California. So thanks for tuning in with us. So if you're just tuning in, we've kind of, you can buffer back and listen a little bit to some of the examples that we've given on trade-offs. Because maybe you're listening to this topic and you're like, what is that? Like, what is a trade-off? But I don't know about you, EJ, but I've heard it a lot in, I guess, different podcasts that I've listened to. People talk about not necessarily the topic, but they use it in that idea of when we make decisions, right? When we go to make a decision, typically there's something that you kind of have to give up in order to make that decision, right? Have you heard anything of around that recently? That idea of when you make a decision, there's going to be some things that you kind of have to give up, or is that applicable to you in any way of things that you've done recently?
Um, I think in a lot of situations we always have to make like a decision between one thing or another. Here's one that I did uh recently actually. It's like choosing to take my diet like seriously this time. Like it's
Got
I
it.
don't know, it's I would say it's tough. It's still tough because before it was just exercise and I didn't like really pay attention to how much I was eating. And the problem with that is like I still wasn't losing as much weight as I wanted to. Like actually I was gaining weight that I didn't want it to gain. So like I like this time I really chose to like take it like more seriously, and it's tough. Like I'm like a lot of time I feel like I would say I feel hungry. I feel like I wanted to like eat more, but I'm sticking with
Got
it
it.
because I'm thinking it will become habit eventually. I'll get used to just one cup of rice eventually. uh, I'll get used to eating a lot of protein eventually. Because the thing with protein is that it's like it how it doesn't it helps you build muscle while also it's also like filling, so it's you can use it to kind of like replace rice, for example.
Mm.
So I've been eating a lot of oatmeal, but like I do miss
Oatmeal, nice.
rice. Yeah, I do miss
Um,
rice. I'm gonna say that. Because I only eat it. I think say I only eat about a cup of rice a day. So,
Got it. Okay.
so
So comparative to before, can I ask, are you okay to share how much you were eating before the one cup?
oh, I didn't even watch how much I ate, but it's like like you have that the rice scooper, like I would just slice like a random part of like the rice and just whatever comes with it. Sometimes it's like this big like lump of like rice.
Okay.
That's what I'll
Okay.
eat.
Got
But
it. All
I
right.
measure it meticulously. I use like a cup, like an actual like cup or a mug, I should say, and I just pack that in my rice, and that's what I use to measure how much rice I eat per meal.
Got it. Okay, so we're kind of in the field of discipline here, right? Being a little bit more disciplined in terms of, because if we go back to that definition of trade-off, right? The trade-off here is basically you want to have a healthier, diet. You want to, for you, this is catered to your lifestyle, right? You want to have a healthier diet based off of the things that you need at that moment. So the trade-off is, eating healthier versus just doing whatever you want,
Like
eating
it's
however much rice you want, right?
I think what really convinced me what was just that one of these days. I think it's like it's happened before, but I don't know why I was like I got very conscious of it that they were. I went like I was going down the stairs and I was what do you call it in English? I was out of breath. I was out of breath when I got down the stairs.
Okay.
I was like I really need to get healthier. so so I don't know. I made the conscious decision of okay, uh, starting today. That's the thing with these things, right? Like I just chose to start. Like I'm gonna start today, right? It's not
Hmm.
like sometimes you kind of feel like oh I'm gonna wait for like the perfect opportunity, the perfect chance to it. But sometimes it's just like you just decide to start on something, and that's what that's where I started. I just said okay, like uh like I'm out of breath just going down the stairs. I need to change something like about
But
like
that's good that you had the, I guess, the conscientiousness or the reflection. It just dawned on you in that moment. Like you're just like, as soon as you thought of it, you're like, okay, I need to. What was your process in that?
actually what I did was I like after like after I ate breakfast and then of course in that breakfast I made the conscious choice to like limit how much rice I ate. That's when I started using the cup that I'm using now to measure the
Got
rice
it.
that I ate. And then after that I worked out and then I weighed myself. I weighed myself. I was like, okay, this is how much I
Mm,
weighed now, which actually surprised me because it was less than the last time I weighed myself, and it did motivate me a little bit. I was like, okay, this is possible. This is possible. So,
got it.
uh, this is possible. So I started setting goals. I think right now my ultimate goal is to like reach 150 to 160 pounds. That's like my goal now. Like that's like my end goal in this in
Hmm.
working out. But what I'm doing now is I'm what do you call it? Like I'm portioning them into 10 pounds each. Where I'm like, okay,
Okay.
I'll share my weight. I'm like, I'm 204 pounds right now, and my goal right now is to reach 200. If I reach 200, then my next goal is 195 and then 190 and then like until I get to like my end goal. So I'm like portioning it so I can keep myself motivated, right? To I know
Hmm.
to keep going. It's not that oh my goal is 150 pounds. It's so far away from 204.
Right.
It's like
Yeah.
200 feels closer to me. So when I get to 200,
Got
I
it.
can motivate myself. Okay, then let's try to get to 195. And then when I get to 195, let's try to get to 190. Like I don't know if it works for everyone, but for me, it works to do it that way.
Okay, so here's my other follow-up question to you because, when we think about making tough decisions, EJ, I don't know that we always, and I'm not speaking for everyone, okay? This is just kind of just speaking for me. I don't know how often we kind of recognize the things that we need to give, when we make decisions. Like in your decision to do that, is it specifically just rice that you're kind of adjusting, or were there other things that you're factoring into your diet in order to feel
No,
better?
there's definitely other things. Say no, I like I just I had to give up like a lot of like the junk food that I did like to eat. you know, like uh, I remember we went to like I'm not gonna mention the place, the fast food place, and like in like normally I would order myself like a burger or something, the ones maybe the ones with bacon. That's like that's my favorite. Like every time I go to to that fast food place, but I I just told myself that's a lot of it's a lot of calories that you're gonna eat for a single meal. So I decided to go for something that's like a little bit healthier, at least in terms of like fast food healthy. Something
Got
that
it.
has like
Okay.
a lot less calories so like I really wanted to get a burger, but like again I had to make that conscious choice of like 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 you're doing this for your own health. Like you'd still get to eat something that's good. It might not be your favorite, but it's still good, and it's a lot less taxing on like
Got
your
it.
diet, right?
Okay. I just want to preface this discussion firstly that of course we're not professionals, right? All of us are just speaking on our personal experiences here. And secondly, the stuff that EJ is speaking on right now, that's specific to his lifestyle.
Yeah.
The way that we kind of talk about trade-offs, and making decisions, everyone will only be able to kind of see what your situation is and then work from there how you decide to move forward, right? Because in EJ's case, that's the decision that he decided to make to cut off rice in that way. But we're not telling all of you to do all of you to do that, right? It's always going to, I guess, cater to the situation that you're in at that moment of what your needs are, of what that looks like for you in terms of the things that you need to handle for your life. Because I know for a lot of people, it's not necessarily about cutting off everything, but maybe just managing how much. Just like in EJ's case, right? It's not completely cutting off rice. It's just controlling how much rice you're getting in that instance. Or I know people who, when they're conscious about their sugar, they try to balance it with a lot of different other things to kind of offset that stuff. So it's not like you can't have your favorite things anymore, but it goes back to that idea of discipline. Even though maybe you really, really want to have like 5 scoops of ice cream, that being the
It's in
trade off of like,
moderation, right? Like it's in
yeah,
moderation. Like, when you like I do know that there will be a time where I can, like, I do let myself eat ice cream. There is a time where I do let myself drink pop or soda or whatever you call it. Like there are times that I let myself do that, but again, it's in moderation, right? It's in
hmm,
moderation. Like if I drink soda, it's just one small cup of soda. Okay, just to get a
right.
taste of soda. Like I don't get like an entire. I don't drink an entire like liter like, of soda. Like if I want ice cream, I get so maybe 2-3 scoops of ice cream every once in a
Hmm.
while, right? And it's not in every with every meal. like, like it might be just just maybe at lunch I'll just get myself like a couple scoops of ice cream just to
Right.
reward myself a little bit. But like I'm still like, what was that that thing that I said? It's like because I would say that sometimes I do feel unmotivated to keep up with my diet, but it's like uh who was that saying like discipline succeeds where motivation fails. So even if I
Mm.
don't feel motivated, I know that I have to keep going with them with this because that's the decision I made. That's the decision I made that I'm going to get to that end goal weight that I wanted to get to. Right? Right.
But that takes a lot of will. I mean, kudos to you, EJ, because that takes a lot of willpower, right? Like being able to make that conscious firstly to recognize the change that you want to happen, right? Like, okay, this is something that needs to change, and then being able to act on it, right? Being able to act on it and willfully like go through with it, right? Because sometimes when we're making these decisions and we think about the stuff that comes up, right? These different stuff that comes up, a lot of it is that idea that you just cited of of, oh, I don't feel motivated, right? I don't feel motivated to do it because maybe at the back of our mind we're thinking of what those trade-offs are. It's not necessarily conscious, but we're kind of like when I think about that idea of exercising, I know, a lot of my friends, they're strapped when it comes to their schedule. It's really, really hard for them to be able to fit into their schedule, being able to work out. And one of the things that they try to do to work around that is just waking up earlier to get that exercise in. Now, the trade-off there is you get less sleep in order for you to get that workout in, or you're dedicating that time, you're allotting that time to that. And being able to do that consistently all the time is really hard, because there are times where we already know when we go into a decision, we kind of see already the thing that we might have to give up. But sometimes there are things that we don't see right away until we're actually in that situation. We're like, oh, I didn't realize that I would feel this tired after
That
working out,
is
or
exactly what it is
doing
like.
this.
Like when I started first started eating less, like I really felt like oh, I'm like super hungry. I really wanna, like, especially if you see food like on the fridge. Like I see my mom's cooking on the fridge. I'm like I really want to eat the adobo right now, but I know I
But
just
just to
can't.
clarify, you're not starving yourself, right, EJ? You're just a controlled diet. That's
Mhm.
what's happening.
Yeah. I was like, I'm not starving myself. Okay, I'm not starving myself. It's like I'm just really watching how much I eat. Like it's like, well, I really want to eat that adobo right now, but I know I just ate lunch. Like, because sometimes, like before, like if I see that adobo, like I'm like, it's okay. Like it's okay that I ate lunch. I'll just exercise later. That's what I always told myself before. I'll just exercise later. But the problem with like exercising and not really watching what I eat is that the exercise isn't really doing anything to help me lose weight, because I'm just like indulging myself with like the food that I eat, right? I'm just eating as much as I wanted to without like really paying attention, like if the exercise that I'm doing is like really uh like really helping me like lose the weight that I wanted to
Yeah.
to lose, right?
It makes me, when you said that, it makes me think of my own experience in terms of, I'm really bad at procrastinating. There are things that I procrastinate on, just as simply as, like, oh, I'll take a nap, right? Like let me take a nap. um I need to rest up a little bit. And yeah, I am tired. And I'm not saying that we can't take naps, okay? That's not what I'm saying. But sometimes what happens to me, this is my experience, what happens to me is that I'll take a nap, I'll wake up, and then I'll realize that the nap became longer than it, because maybe like I woke up and then I was like, ah, I'll sleep a little, like I'll sleep 10 more minutes. And then that 10 minutes became 20 more minutes. And then, it just keeps adding on. And this is stuff that happens to us all the time, right? And then that's normal. Because sometimes we do need to rest. But we kind of have to navigate those points where it's like, how much are you procrastinating on purpose versus
Really
versus,
sense of that. I like that reminds me of another thing that I had to do was like really watch what time like I sleep, because before like I would admit this before I would sleep like maybe 2 3 in the morning and like if I
yeah.
sleep 2 or 3 in the morning I wake up like really late. I'd say like maybe 11, like
Hmm.
usually around 11 in the morning. Like I would wake 11 in the morning. There was even one time I woke up like 1 in the afternoon and I felt like really bad about that. So like I also made that decision of like, and I would say that I didn't have enough time to do a lot of things because of that, because I woke up late. So like I had to make that decision of, okay, I have to sleep the at the latest 12, at the latest 12 I have to sleep at the latest like around 12, because if I sleep like any later than that and I'm gonna wake up like late, I'm gonna feel tired throughout the day, like, and I took a lot of naps because like, can you imagine, I already woke up late and then I'm taking a lot of like naps. So like I had even less I had even less time, and sometimes it's just like deciding that something needs to change, right? Something needs to change with I don't know, when we notice something in our life that we decide, yeah, something needs to change about this. Right?
I mean, in your example, for me, it's not even just having less time to do stuff. When I take that nap, y- I could have accomplished the thing that because let's say it's a choice between, okay, I have time right now. I could get this, music stuff taken care of, or I could take a nap. And maybe that music stuff would have taken me only 5 minutes, but then but then I took a nap and it's just like, oh, well, you kind of that's your trade off there. And you kind of have to own that once it's already happened, right? And again, I want to stress to everyone who's listening, I'm not against taking naps, okay? But it's more about us being conscious of our decisions, not to the point of micromanaging, right? We're not going to micromanage every single decision that we make in life, but it's recognizing that there are going to be consequences or there are going to be results. I don't want to, consequences seems too heavy of a word. There's going to be results from decisions that we make. And sometimes those results may be favorable to us and sometimes it's not. But what's nice is that we get to kind of sit back and reflect on how these different trade-offs kind of manifest or being able to recognize them before we make a decision or before we go into anything, especially if it's a more serious decision, because a lot of the decisions that we're talking about is just day-to-day stuff, like being able to wake up properly in the morning. Nathan put there in the live chat, he's like, why is it so hard to wake up in the morning? I know. I know, bro. It's tough. And it's there are different things that all of us kind of deal with on our own, where again, it's unique to us. Our bodies are all different. There are some people who will sleep that late at night because they need to, and that's
Mhm.
just reality. They need to because maybe it's for their work, maybe it's for these other things, but they recognize that what the trade-off is if they don't do that, they won't be able to get their work done. So everybody kind of has to live with these decisions that they make for themselves, right? They kind of have to deal with whatever results come from them, and that's really what we're getting from this topic today, is for us to be able to properly reflect. Can we reflect on the decisions that we're making? Can we reflect on the choices that we're making? And what are the results that will be the fruits of those decisions? There's sometimes when maybe when we're looking back at a situation, we kind of recognize, oh yeah, like when I made that decision, I had to give up this and this. And then being able to reflect on it and ask yourself, well, are you happy with that kind of result? Are you happy with what you did? And you could say yes, because maybe the reason why you were firm on that decision was because of your principles, because it was a deal breaker for you that you wanted to be firm on that decision. But maybe you might look back at that situation or that decision and you're like, I probably could have handled that differently if I, shifted something around or if I did something differently. Um, I think a lot about, um, when we're trying to improve ourselves, right? Like what we've been talking about a little bit already in terms of dieting and exercise, or being able to be better with time management. These are all things that we kind of work on the daily. But even if you look at the underlying core values of those, it's a lot of it is like what we said, discipline earlier, even patience. I guess there's some things that I think about in my life, like if I want to be more patient, it's something that's good, right? But that doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. There's going to be some things that you might have to give up in order to be patient, or to give up to be more understanding,
And you have to
right?
be like more conscious as well, though, with being like patient. Where sometimes something will happen that will might make you feel irritated, and
Mm-hmm.
you have to constantly remind yourself, okay, breathe, breathe. Like before you react, think about it first. Think about it first. Like give them if it's with someone, give them the benefit of the doubt, right? Like it's like you said, it's like it's a conscious decision that you
Conscious,
have to.
yeah.
Sorry, I struggle with that word sometimes. Conscious decision that you have to make. Right?
Yeah, it's stuff that I've been thinking about because, like I said earlier, we're not out to micromanage our decisions, right? Or to get us to that point of not being able to make one. But it's good to still reflect and be able to see, again, for all of us individually, because everyone's different, being able to see what, what we need for our life and how we can adjust. How can we make these shifts even in these tough decisions, and recognizing, okay, what is going to be the trade-off here? What is going to be the thing that I'm giving up? And then when you look at all of those things that you're giving up, can you live with that decision? Can you live with that choice that you're going to make? And a lot of what we think about too is, it goes back to what our principles are and things that are important to us, things that are valuable to us that we don't want to give up, that we don't want to compromise. So, now that we kind of given I feel like we've given a lot of different examples in terms of things that could be trade-offs, right? Just to add a little bit more in terms of, when you think of different aspects of how things could influence the decisions that we make. It's like, it could be time, it could be our resources, the balance between everything. um, all of these things are different factors that might play into how we make decisions and thinking about those trade-offs that might come up. So even for those who are there in the live chat, Atakat says naps are great. Yeah, naps are great. Nothing against naps, okay? Nothing against naps. It's just we're talking more about, you know, finding that balance, or individually, right? Personally. Um, when we go to make decisions, when we go to make choices, what are some of the steps that we can do when we're making those tough decisions? Like for you, AJ, I know the example that you gave earlier, you kind of spoke on that a lot. Um, but what are things that you consider in order to be more aware of what things you might have to give up in terms of what you're pursuing? Does my
I should,
question make sense?
yeah, I'll give a different example because I think the exercise or the dining one was just something that I didn't really give a lot of thought on until I was like already there. But like one that I did give a lot of like thought before it's a decision that I made was like quitting my full time job, which was I don't know it was a I would say a kind of tough decision to to make because at one and I was earning what I would consider is a lot. Like I would consider that a lot. Like for maybe for the other people it might not be much, but for me that was a lot. But what I noticed with that job was that I didn't have time, not just for myself, but for like my family, for my friends. Right, I didn't have time to hang out with people, and usually I felt like even if I did have time, I felt tired to like even do like anything, right? So I had to make that like tough decision of having to let go of that job and look for a different one where like I would still like I might not earn as much, but I would still have time to hang out with my family, my friends, have time to find something that I enjoyed, right? And like I had to consider that before I made that decision to quit that job. I would say uh I was going back and forth with that decision for months. Like for months, I had to like in my head go over like you'll miss your coworkers, you'll miss you'll miss this routine that you have now. You'll miss coming into work and like doing this work. Like there were those things, but there's also like I want to I want to spend more time with my family. I want to take up there was a duty I wanted to take up that I didn't at the time because I just thought of like my how hectic my schedule was that it added to that to that when I was weighing the pros and cons, like it added to that side of like okay, I'll be able to take up that duty now that I'll have I'll have the time and the energy to to do more things, right? So it's like I would say it was a almost a couple months of back and forth of like trying to weigh out those things between each other. It's like I don't even want to call it a pro and con because it's just between two things that I wanted, that I had to make a decision like which weighed more, like in terms of like my future, which was more important for me. Yeah.
What I, thank you for that answer, EJ, because it makes me reflect on the reality of what a lot of people face. Again, I'm not trying to generalize or to speak for everyone's situation, but everyone has possibly gone through something similar where you you kind of think about what your needs are at that moment, right? I think about in terms of, like, I know a lot of parents who work, two jobs, sometimes even three jobs, in order to be able to provide for their family. And because that is what the need is at the moment, that's what they do because they want to provide, because what you mentioned earlier, being able to provide a good future for their family. And sometimes it means maybe not forever, but for that time being, they sacrifice that time, that they maybe want to spend with their kids or spend with their family because they want to make sure that the needs of the family are met. That doesn't mean that they're neglecting their family completely, right? They still make time like when they can.
Like I would
But
say for me, I was because I had the choice. Like I didn't need
yeah.
to do it, But
Mm,
yeah, for some, especially for the parents, there's some they need to do that, and that's the decision that they make, right? Because they need, like at the time that's what they needed to do, right?
yeah. And that's what, in thinking of that idea of trade-offs is really that, right? Being able to examine what's important to you, what your values are, what your situation is at the moment, and then being able to make a decision from there. Because sometimes when we're, at least in the things that I've experienced, maybe within the last year or last few years or most of my teenage life, even in my teenage life, there are decisions that you have to make that sometimes in that moment you're like, this is hard, or like, oh, this is I don't know about this, but then you go through with it because you're thinking about what's at stake for you, right? I'm I feel like I'm using business terms now. Like, you have your stakes, right? You have the stakes of what's on the line that you need to be able to take care of, that you need to be able to preserve, or that you need to be able to protect, so that you can sustain that, whatever it is. It could be a need, like what we talked about for family. I mean, like, even thinking about in I know a lot of people who I was watching. Shout out to Erica, Erica Celestina. I was listening to one of the features on our INC TV last night. It was like additional encouragement for me, and I was listening to her story, and it talks about, there's a point where she stopped school and she worked two jobs to be able to support her family. And there are situations like that you might encounter now, that you may have encountered, that it looks different for everybody. So, but being able to kind of, I guess, think about that process of, okay, when I go into to make a decision, being aware of the things that you will be giving up when you make that decision. And that's not just, that's not just something actively that you're doing, but something even passively that you're doing. Like when you're out in public, right? When you're out in public and you decide to do these things, maybe you do it out of habit, or maybe you do it unconsciously, and then after you've done it, you're like, oh, is that something that I normally would be okay doing? Maybe because you're in a bad mood, or maybe been a frustrating day for you, right? It goes back to that idea of self-control and discipline. Like, what are your principles? Who do you want to be? And then when you're in those tougher situations, how do you show up in that way? And I'm not saying that that's easy. It's really hard to be self-controlled, like in situations where you just want to be, you just want to, maybe you just want to yell at everybody, or you don't want to, because, and not necessarily because they did anything to you, but maybe you're just, it's just one of those days, right? But being able to have that not letting your emotions take over you in that way, right? That's another example that I can think of in trade-offs, because you know there are times when, let's say, with my mom, there are times where we have our moments that it gets tough. There are disagreements, and of course I always try to be respectful, and there might be times where I might get upset, and in my mind maybe I want to, the reflex maybe is I want to talk back, I want to say something, but being able to be conscious of that idea that if I say this, whatever came to mind, what if I say something that's going to hurt her, that is not repairable? Like, do I don't want to regret the things that are coming out of my mouth. So that's one of the things that you know make me think also about trade-offs, going back to that idea of the qualities that we kind of pursue, the qualities that we aspire for. um it's not easy to aspire for those things, to have empathy, or to be understanding, or to be compassionate, but it's in that, it's in that striving for that quality where it may not be easy in that moment, but once you kind of get better at it, it becomes a little bit easier. And that's true for a lot of the other things that we've talked about, right? Like even with like exercising or eating healthier, sometimes in the beginning, it's in the beginning where that's the tougher part. Like that's the tougher part to kind of cope up with. But then as you go along, as you get used to it a little bit more, it gets easier, and then it becomes easier to adopt as a habit. Shout like throw back to our
Yeah, I
topic, but
was gonna say I feel like we talked about this last week, like building habits.
it's all related. It's all related, right? Um, but yeah, that's just some stuff that I think about, because, of course, again, I'm gonna keep going back to this phrase. We don't want to micromanage our decisions to the point that we reach indecision, right? That we become paralyzed with decision, or that we just can't make one. But being able to have that, um, have I don't want to use self control again, but
Conscious.
that consciousness, and that the willpower, again, it's not easy, but that willpower to kind of pause, as opposed to maybe acting right away, even if it's just like a moment, even if it's just a minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It doesn't have to be something that's super long. It doesn't even have to be a full day. It could be if you needed it to be, but just being able to pause, and then, okay, if I go through with this, what are potential results that
Mhm.
could come from this, right? What are potential results that could come from this if I go through with this, right? So that you know we can be able to create better processes. I don't know, I don't want to say just habits, because I feel like over time, once you kind of adopted these different ways of having that self-control, that discipline, it becomes more of a natural process to you, that again, it becomes just easier to do. Like when you get upset at certain things, like maybe once you've kind of chilled out, or not that we can't get angry, I'm not saying that we can't have
Yeah,
emotions, okay, but it's just you learn to deal with it a little bit better, you learn to cope up with it a little bit better, just by having that moment to pause, and being able to think of, if I go through with this, what could happen. Because there are a lot of things that we don't realize when we passively, even when we passively do things, like what I mentioned earlier. It's not just when you're actively like making a decision, or there are things that you could just passively do unconsciously when you're out in
I don't
public,
know if
when
you
you're
hear this, if you ever heard this phrase before, like maybe when someone's like apologizing to you, it's like
hmm
sometimes I say things I don't mean. Right? I don't know how many
yeah.
times you've heard that phrase before, and that got me to thinking now, like like how can you say something you don't mean? Really, like
I mean, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, it's like like at least for me, right? It's become a more conscious effort to not say things that I don't mean, right? Maybe like I also give myself like the benefit that I might I might at I don't know at certain points, but like now I'm more conscious about not saying something that I don't mean because of like just because of again like one of the things is how it makes me feel afterwards, right? after I've calmed down, it's like, why did I say that? Right? Like, why did I say that? Like if someone said that to me, that'll like really hurt. Like, why would I say that to someone I care about, right? Like in
And sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead, yeah.
No, I was just gonna say it's that kind of thinking of thinking it happens often after the fact, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's happened after, but if there's a way that we can handle that process before, right? Wouldn't that just make a
But
lot of things easier? You know, like it's hard. I'm not saying that it's easy, okay? Everyone, like these things are hard. Um, I don't want to say that it's hard in a way that it's impossible. It is possible, but it's stuff that does take time. And me and EJ are speaking on these things as people who still struggle with this, who still have a hard time, being able to recognize those trade-offs, because it can, these things can show up in different aspects of our life, and sometimes we don't even realize it until we're in that situation after we've made a decision. But what can be good for us to do is to, I don't want to say plan, but kind of plan, even before you even reach that kind of situation, like in that situation that you gave EJ, just self-reflecting on the kind of person that you want to be, right? The kind of person that you want to be in all kinds of situations, and then figuring out how you can execute on that, so that when it does come up, you can hold on to whatever that is, knowing already that if you don't do it that way, these are the things that I would be giving up, or these are the potential results that will come from it if I don't, right? um I think about the example that you gave earlier too, with because it echoes what Melvi mentioned earlier in the live chat. She was talking about, working overtime, and all of us have the same amount of time, right? All of us have the same amount of time. And EJ, you've always echoed that to me. You've always reminded me of that. All of us have the same amount of time, but we all have our our freedom to spend it as we will. And that's another thing that kind of goes back to that idea of trade-offs. It's like, what is valuable to you? What's important to you? How are you going to connect that to your time, and recognizing that when you spend time on one thing, you do recognize that you're going to have to give it up for another thing.
Yeah.
And we're not here to say that this is right, this is wrong, but to get everyone to reflect on, that's the reality. That one thing that I've heard recently is that you can do everything but not all at the same time. Right? You can't do it all at the same time. Sometimes there are things that's why we have priorities. There are things that take higher priority than other things in our life, because that's what our principles are, that's what our values are, that's what our core is. Especially for us as Christians, right? That's when we talk about, when we say duties, or when we talk about the things that we do for church, those are things that take precedence for us, because we know that that's valuable to us. We know that that's important to us, as that's something that we don't want to give up. um, Being able to recognize that in all of the decisions that we make, again, not just active ones, but even passively, because if we aren't conscious of even the passive decisions that we're making, like, oh, I'll just do, whatever, and then, you're, like, let's say you're in a public place, and you're carrying, supposed to be the person that you are, and then it's like, oh, is that something that I would have wanted to live up to? Because your trade-off there then becomes, that's what people will recognize you as, that's what people will identify you as whatever it could be, good or bad. It could be good or bad in any situation, how you're showing up. So it's nice to be able to kind of pause and sit, and I hope that all of you who are listening with us, that you've kind of been able to do that throughout, our broadcast. And again, we're not out here to point fingers on what stuff, like, I'm not saying,
Just
don't eat your
that
ice cream.
aside.
I'm not saying don't eat your ice cream. I'm not saying, whatever it may be, but recognizing the stuff in your life, the things that are important to you, the things that you want to accomplish, the things that are of value to you, that you want to preserve, that you want to protect. Um, Being aware of the things that you could possibly trade off through different decisions that you make is helpful, because then you won't have to look at it in retrospect and be like, oh, I wish, with regret, like, oh, I wish I didn't do that, or oh, I wish, you
That's it.
know,
Yeah.
this ended up differently, right? Thinking of the long-term effects of the things that we do, right?
Mhm.
You may not immediately see it in that moment, but over time you're like, oh, so this is the result of that decision. Okay.
That made me think of like this thought that I've had before. Like, and it happens every time I start taking working out. Like seriously, it's like if only I worked out earlier, then I'd already be fit by now.
Ah, okay.
It's like it's like, well, you're starting now. Like
Mhm.
maybe in a couple months, in a couple years, you'll look back at this like, like that's like I feel like now I just told myself I'm tired of like feeling that way, that if only I continued, working out like that, if only like that no, that saying, I didn't wanna feel that way anymore. I didn't wanna tell myself that anymore, that if only I did this, then
But that's a good reframe.
Mhm.
That's good that you're able to do that for yourself.
Mhm. So that's what I decided. Now I don't want to tell myself that, like in the future. I don't want to tell myself if only. Do it now. Like for me, do it in the now, so you won't have to say if only later on. you know?
But I just want to add um, a little something to that, because being able to own the decisions that we've made, right? It's okay to go back and say that we were wrong about situations, right? That,
Mhm. Yeah.
you know, because when I'm listening to saying that, I feel like I hear myself like beating myself up, just like, oh, you shouldn't have done that. Oh, like, you can't hold yourself to the past in that way, where the only thing that we have is now, like what you said. We have now. We have now to shift and change and make these decisions. If you realize that there's something that you gave up that you didn't want to, go back to that.
Mhm.
Go back to it and fight for it, right? Not fight for it, okay? Not literal, but you know what I mean, figuratively speaking. I just want clarity here in in the broadcast today. It's, we have to recognize what's important to us, and the only way that we can really do that is to sit and reflect and be real with ourselves. um I know this, we've gotten a little bit more serious. In the beginning we were talking about trade-offs that happen with like waking up late, right? Or,
Yeah.
but those things add up. Those simple little things, those add up over time, that kind of create these, um I guess, systems that we have for ourselves, right? And if we're not careful, if we're not paying attention, if we're not paying attention to these different things, then it might become something that is just an unconscious decision, as opposed to something that's more intentional. And we always want to be intentional when we're living our life, especially as Christians, because at the end of the day we want to do things that please God, right? That's what our goal is in anything. So I hope that, for those who are listening, one, I hope you don't feel judged, like whatever we've talked about today, because I'm not perfect. EJ's not perfect.
Mhm.
We've
It's
all gone
this not
through,
just to help you uh to help you be more conscious, right?
yeah, more conscious, and to think a little bit more about the potential results that could come from our decisions, the potential things that, um, I want to say consequences, but not consequences necessarily in a negative way. It's just things that could happen with the things, and that's not to do it in a way that makes us panic, right? Not in terms of like being, giving ourselves anxiety, like, oh, if I do this, like this is gonna happen, or if I do this, this is gonna happen, right? Eventually, we have to be firm on some decision, right? And
Mhm.
being able to own that, but being conscious of it and being aware of those things, it helps bring a little bit more clarity to how we will move forward, right? It's a good practice in reflection, in self-evaluation, um just so that we can become better versions of ourselves, because we always want to strive for that, right? In order to keep improving, in order to keep growing, and in order to be better than who we were yesterday, we kind of need to assess and self-reflect and be more aware. And doing that at the very base of the basic of action that we do all the time, making decisions, um, it helps to know what those trade-offs are. It helps to know, um, what you could be giving up if you decide on a thing. And we didn't even speak on all the potential situations that we could encounter. I know that there's a lot of you out there who are maybe students, right? And you know that idea of thinking of like wasted time, right? Like, oh, like sayang oras, or like, you weren't able to. If there, I know a lot of people who've switched their majors, right? Sorry, it's raining here. I don't know if you can hear the rain.
We can a little bit,
Can you hear the
but I
rain?
think your mic is no, your
It's
mic is filtering it out properly.
I hope it's not too loud. Can you still understand what I'm saying? No.
Yeah, we can still hear
You
you.
can? Okay, cool. Um, so I know a lot of people who've switched their majors, who've gone into something different, and it's taken them longer. It's taken them longer than the traditional 4 years. That happens. The trade-off there is, yeah, you'll have to spend, more time in school. It's going to require a little bit more money, but maybe this profession is the one that is really fitted for you. And there's so many different situations that we didn't get to talk about today, because me and EJ are limited in our experiences between between us. So, and the rain is getting really strong here, and I don't know if you can still understand me. So I think
Actually,
it's time for us to go.
if you
EJ.
wanna, just want to say, if you wanna share your experiences with us about like the trade offs that you had to make or something, you can join us on the show. Just let me know. Just let Tony know. We can get you on the show to talk about what your trade offs were as well, right? Maybe in a part two or something. This topic, right? I don't know if you froze or
I can't even hear you anymore. That's how loud it is here. But I'll just go ahead, and because already 12:56. Do you have any additional insights or thoughts on the topic before we close out, EJ?
Just want to reiterate to be more conscious of the decisions that you make. Again, we're not telling you that to make one choice over the other. For us, it's always like what we found more important. Like when we made those choices, it was like what we found more important, what we prioritized at that time. And it might be different for you, it might be different for us in the future. So just be conscious of like the choices that you do make when you make those trade-offs. Trade-off of broadcasting with a nice background. Nathan said in the live chat, it's a trade-off of broadcasting with a nice background that sometimes it'll rain.
Trade off, yeah, that's 100%. I just saw your comment. Yeah, so that's our time to go. Thank you to everyone who's been tuning into INC Radio Chatline. We hope that this has helped you in any way. Again, we're not out to make the decisions or to pick the decisions for you, but just for you to help us all be a little bit more aware together, a little bit more intentional together, and of course, being better together. So thank you to everyone who's been tuning in, even with the replay. Thank you to my co-host, EJ, to all of our listeners out there watching the replay or watching live with us. Thank you for commenting there in the team live chat. And we hope that this has been a conversation that has mattered to you. Think about your trade-offs before you make decisions. This is my trade-off right now, literally, literally live. Being outside, this is what you potential. All right. Same time next week, everyone. We'll see you. This has been INT Radio Chatline. Take care.
This is what I ask. Let me always dwell